Welcome in. Thanks for joining us. I'm Tyler Noe. He's Lance Barton. This is Always Talking Ball. A lot of people that I talked to this week said that this slate, just plain and simple, sucked. And while I admitted it was a down week, college football Saturdays never disappoint. College football is a little like Vanderbilt's offense. It tends to lull you to sleep a little in September, and then bam, as Randy Orton would say, RKO out of nowhere, upsets galore. 5 top 11 teams go down, 4 of them to unranked teams. But hey, only 3 in the ATB rankings went down, okay? So we've got our finger on the pulse of college football, a little bit better than that pesky poll that shall not be named. We're going to get to our top 12 here in a bit. But if you tuned into our episode following week 2, I was allowed to say my piece and talk about Notre Dame losing to Northern Illinois in embarrassing fashion. So, my friend, the floor is all yours.
I really can't remember a time as an Alabama fan of being at the highest of highs and then 1 week later, the lowest of lows. I really can't. I mean, that was the... people wanted to say like the UL Monroe game that Saban had back in 2007. No, not the same, because what Saban inherited and what we as Alabama fans had been through as fans before that. I mean, we had been putting up with garbage football for a while before Saban got there. And so with the winning and the expectation that is Alabama football, this was the most mind-blowing. This was like South Florida last year if South Florida would have pulled the win out against Alabama. That's what this was.
Yeah.
And because Alabama just beat Georgia the next week, it just made it even more shocking. I got to be honest, even when it was 23-7, I mean, I openly admit it on here. I mean, we texted each other. A few other people texted me as well. I mean, they were giving out the live line at Alabama even money to win the game. And I said, I got to take it. I'm going to take it. I still felt like they were going to win that football game. And obviously they had their chances, but
even as soon as Milroe threw that pick 6, I took Alabama minus 7.5.
Okay. Yeah. You took it
fully on Alabama then. And then I bet them money line with you at 23-7. So yeah.
Yeah. I think, it just never once until even the pessimism as a fan, I never once thought that Alabama was going to lose that game outright until it was in the fourth quarter. When it was in the fourth quarter, that's when I really started, okay, this is the amount of time that Vandy kept taking off the freaking clock on offense. So let's
42 and change in time of possession.
Yep. And we'll just start there.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's safe to say Alabama's got some problems on defense. What was the phrase that you used when you play ugly or something happens and you win?
Winning masks deficiencies and losing amplifies them. And if Alabama were to pull that game out yesterday, again, you probably would have been overlooking some of the things that they struggled with. Now you lost and boom, it's staring you right in the face.
Yeah. Well, the defense is just trash right now. Let's just call it what it is. That's just what they are. In the last 6 quarters of football, so starting in the third quarter against Georgia, Alabama has given up. The other team has ran 125 plays in 6 quarters of football. That equates to about 84 plays per game average. Your defense can't be on the field that much. Can't be on the field that long. 67 points in the last 6 quarters is what the defense has given up. That equates to 44.6 points per game. If you break it out per quarter, multiply that times 4 quarters. And like you just said, the 42 minutes, like the time of possession that Vandy had the ball, that's because they can't get their ass off the field on third down. Vandy was 12 for 18. 12 for 18 on third down. That's ridiculous. 1 for 1 on fourth down. And if you want to go back to the Georgia game, I talked about how it's tough enough to stop Georgia on third down. Bama actually held Georgia 3 for 15 on third downs, but they gave up 6. Georgia was 6 for 6 on fourth down against Alabama in that second half. So they stayed on the field in that second half. Alabama's defense can't get teams off the field right now, and that's a problem. And then Let me ask you a question. Do you think that there really is a certain thing as an offense being too explosive?
Oh yeah, I mean we said it last week. Like you said if they're going to not run the clock down, the play clock down when they have that huge lead to 2 seconds and then run the ball, then you got to pick one or the other. But I mean, obviously yesterday they had to come back. But
Yeah.
again, that's what they are right now, is they are a deep shot offense. I mean, the running backs are not. I love Jam Miller. You know, I love Jam Miller.
Yeah.
I love Justice Haynes, and they're not getting enough push against some of these other teams. And I don't know if it's because we talked all off season about kind of parity is like shifting to college football, similar to NFL because of NIL and the portal. The depth is gone. And then obviously some of these guys that Vanderbilt is getting now, Vanderbilt's not the team that they were once. Like they are not a pushover anymore.
No.
And
I'm glad
getting
you said that because I wanted to say that, but I knew if I come on here and say that, well, Vanderbilt's actually bet, people would be like, get that shit out of here.
I mean, the guys they get maybe from New Mexico State, but like they're dogs, like, and they're really good players, as evidenced by their quarterback. So, and they've already taken Missouri to the wire and they beat Virginia Tech. So we fully knew, kind of something like this could be possible, but we really never thought it would happen.
No. And I mean, I don't really have much to say. Alabama's offense right now, the only thing that I will mention is like there were times the offensive line had breakdowns, specifically at right tackle with Elijah Pritchett. He had a couple of times where he gave up some free rushers and Milroe had to make something happen. And just so happened, one of the times that he had no idea that the free rusher was coming off that edge, he never saw it because the right tackle Pritchett just completely whiffed. And the dude just lit Milroe up and we caused a fumble.
It was so crazy, too, when that USF game, Pritchett came in, and then they just started dominating. And then I texted you, I mean, midway through that game, I was like, man, it just seems like every time I look up, Pritchett is just getting his defenders flying right by him.
Yep. Yeah, he did not have a good game against Vandy. There's no doubt about it. But as far as the run game, I mean, some people, like I heard Kublik during the game talking about, like, the second time that Alabama had only had 3 occasions where they ran the ball back-to-back times in the entire game. And 2 of the times that they did, they hit long run plays. But again, they were so far behind, it was hard to run the football.
Yeah.
But once they got it there where it was a neck and neck game there in that second half, like pretty quick, I would have liked to seen run the football a little more, let the defense get a little bit of a breather. A little bit, like let's keep Vandy's offense off the field a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think we saw in that Georgia game that's not DeBoer and Sheridan's MO, man. Like that's and everybody knows it's kind of like the hypo thing. They look at DeBoer and like passing offense, but I mean, Dylan Johnson last year for Washington had a really good stat line. Like he was a really good running back.
Multiple games over 100 yards.
It's just weird to see that from them.
It is, and I'm curious too. But I have nothing. I'm just curious too how much autonomy Milroe has out there as well, as far as maybe calling his own number. I have no idea. I'm just curious if there's some of that going on.
I mean, if he sees a one-on-one with Ryan Williams, he's going to take that every time.
Right. And in some of the like read plays that they're running, like there are times where Milroe's pulling it, and he shouldn't. He should be handing it off on some of those plays. But also too. I think the thing that bothered me the most, 2 things that bothered me the most as an Alabama fan with that game, other than the fact just actually losing to Vandy. The way they lost, as in, there's a lot of times that when Bama loses, there's a lot of self-inflicted wounds. There are times when the other team obviously just goes out and just beats our ass. I said our, yes. And that was the case this time. I know Alabama had 2 turnovers, but the 2 turnovers, I mean, Vandy was making plays. Like a tip ball, like somebody tipped that ball to cause the interception.
Yeah.
The sack fumble, they beat the offensive tackle and laid an absolute lick on Milroe to cause that fumble. That was not Alabama self-destructing. That was Vandy making plays that caused that. And then that freaking offense, that shotgun, triple option offense that they run, dude, I mean, I don't know that I've ever seen a team just not be able to make adjustments at all. Like Vandy didn't do anything different, even in the second half.
Yeah.
There was nothing done different. So it was a little deflating that, Vandy just came out and kicked Alabama's ass. That's all there is. That's all there was to that. The other part, I've never seen an Alabama team just chirping and talking so much trash for an entire football game.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically the defense. They are getting punked by Vandy. Punked. And out there running their mouth. And then when the game was over, at the end of the game, we all saw 13 Malachi Moore's antics that he pulled. I knew, I was like, well, that's going to blow up all over social media. And it did. And rightfully so. That's the world we live in. But what I did not know about was what Clint Lamb, who covers Alabama, which, by the way, if you're an Alabama fan, you want to see some really good Alabama coverage, Clint Lamb's the guy you need to go check out. He's really good.
Mm-hmm.
But he shared on Twitter an incident that took place at the end of the game that wasn't shown on national television, which was defensive coordinator Kane Womack and Kalen DeBoer were basically out on the field trying to get Malachi Moore off the field and substituted for him. And he literally put his hand on the guy and told him to go back on the sideline. He wasn't coming out and didn't listen to him. And I'm the only thing I'm not going to speculate on is supposedly what he said, what he yelled back at the sidelines.
Yeah.
I'm not even going to repeat it because, to be honest with you, I have no idea if that's true. So I'm not going to sit here and start rumors. Not in the business of reporting news. I'm just saying what we actually saw on this field. That was embarrassing. It just was. It was embarrassing. And the way that they acted on the field, I'll say this, as an Alabama fan, didn't like it one bit, hated it, despised it. I'm fine with you being a sore loser. I love what Cam Newton said. Yes, Alabama fan saying this. Cam Newton, a long time ago, somebody called him a sore loser, and he said, would you rather me be a great loser? Like, what the hell? I don't want to be a great loser.
Yeah.
Like, I'm fine with being a little bit of a sore loser, okay? That's cool. But, like, the way they acted, honestly, man, I was not. Didn't like it one bit. It made me just as honestly as irritated and as mad of losing the game as it did anything else, the way that they were acting in general.
You mentioned it too, I mean, a couple weeks ago, or like just periodically about how the culture has obviously changed. And, you know, this is a different Alabama team and how, okay, on they're beating Wisconsin and Jump Around comes on and they're going nuts. You wouldn't have seen a lot of that on like Saban's teams, and like, you wouldn't hear like a lot of music played or whatever. I've heard you mention stuff like, previously throughout the preseason and the first month of the season. But this is kind of what you get when he gets to the bad side.
Yep. I mean, it's all well and good when everybody's winning and having fun. But we saw now what they acted like when things aren't going as well. So, hey, I mean, this is one of those, man, you just got to flush it.
Yeah.
Move on. Like, take the tape. Like, when I was in high school, our coach took a game tape and took a sledgehammer to it after a game where we got upset by somebody awful. That's what you do with this, and just move on. I'll say this. Thank God for the 12-team playoff.
Yeah.
Because the only way with a 14 playoff now is if they would have to run the table and win the SEC championship.
Yeah.
But I know that a lot of this was mostly talked about on the Alabama side of things. I am going to 100% give my utmost respect to Diego Pavia and that Vandy football team for the old the movie Little Giants, where they say one time. Vandy put all their chips in the middle of the table and just gave it to the number one team in the country for 4 quarters and ended up winning that football game. And I think they earned respect from everybody across the country, including Alabama and Alabama fans. They're no longer the laughing stock of things. As a matter of fact, the laughing stock right now is Alabama for losing to them like they did. That's the laughing stock.
Yeah. They earned so much respect that a couple of AP voters voted them number 18 in the poll this week.
Just think if they didn't just lay an egg against Georgia State.
I know. And their only loss would have been in overtime to Mizzou. Like, yeah.
Yeah, they would have wins over Virginia Tech and Alabama, and the only loss would be in overtime, like you said, on the road.
And they should have won that Mizzou game. So, I mean,
Yep.
Diego Pavia, he's the Iron Bowl champion now. Conquered both Auburn and Alabama in the span of, 10 months. From my side of things, yeah, just like you did a month ago, man, when Notre Dame lost, I had some buddies texting me, just asking how you're doing. I told him he probably would have been, like, better if you would have lost, like, last week versus this week. I mean,
Yeah.
But when you suffer a loss like this, and this is kind of the thing. I mean, it's such a different feeling. Like and then honestly, like you mentioned, Bama fans have not felt this in an enormous amount of time, and I would venture to say 133 other FBS programs have felt that since the last time Bama felt that.
Yeah.
It's just losing like as a huge favorite like that, and Georgia fans can go off all they want. They're acting like Kirby didn't lose at home to Vandy his year one. Okay, let's all remember that. I think if this turns out like Kirby Smart, with Alabama, I think Alabama fans would be just fine with that in the long run. So,
Yeah.
But I mean, it was an absolutely historic upset. Like Vandy was 0-60 versus AP top 5 teams in the entire history.
Yeah, I mean, it's Vandy, bro.
Yeah.
I mean, it's Vandy.
Yeah.
Like not just us, every podcast, show, whatever. Dude, even in SEC media days, when it's Vandy's turn.
Yeah.
I mean, people aren't even in the crowd there interviewing anybody. Nobody cares. Like, it's just, oh, yeah, there's the little Vandy, and they just move on. That's just God, dude.
Yeah, and like you said, I mean, they dominated them in the trenches, which was crazy to see. The third down conversions, Pavia just seemed to make the right decision every single time. Like it was incredible. I think he completed 80% of his passes, right?
Yeah, dude. Diego Pavia's heart was bigger than the 300-something pound lineman on Alabama's team. One of my buddies, Trevor, I would say his name, Trevor, shout out Trevor, texted our little group text one time and said, just a spineless effort from Alabama. And I agree. It was.
Yeah.
It was. No adjustments were made. And another friend also said the same thing, too, there in the second half. Adjustments, no adjustments, whatever. When it's late there in the game and they're trying to run the clock out, just man up and make a play. And they couldn't even do that.
Yeah.
Last thing I'll say, for all of the things, because up until yesterday, from the moment he was hired, Kalen DeBoer has done everything like flawlessly.
Mm-hmm.
The transition from Saban to him was unbelievable how good everything was. The offseason, incredible. Recruiting, incredible. Winning games, beating Georgia, like endearing himself to the fan base like nobody's business. As our good friend Cole Frederick said, Coach Kalen DeBoer, welcome to the show. Because he just got baptized in some crimson waters after that game, because the amount of stuff being talked about now from everybody, not just Alabama fans, everybody. We knew this was going to happen. It was predictable, but it's 10 times worse because it's to Vandy. The Nick Saban would have never done that. Nick Saban wouldn't have had that defense out there playing them and them boys doing that. No, yeah, that's what's being said everywhere. He is literally now, he could walk somewhere down in Tuscaloosa and people look at him with disgust right now. Whether you like it or not, that's what you sign up for with that job.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it's all about how you respond.
It is.
And how
they're going to
respond.
I mean, go on all day about this, but I'll let you transition whenever you want, man. I'll talk about it all night if you want.
Yeah, the final thing I was gonna say is just, if you guys have listened to us, you know who we root for. And both of our teams are still in the thick of this race. You know what Alabama has that a lot of teams don't have, and that's still a win over Georgia. Doesn't matter if I don't think Georgia's that good or you don't think Georgia's that good or whatever. Heck, a lot of teams may not be good this year. They may not be great.
God, it
they
sure looks that way.
Win over Georgia, right? Notre Dame still got to win at A&M. That's looking really good now. So, and we're going to throw each other jabs and everything. We can all come back and have friends, and it's just college football. And, just appreciate the beauty and madness that is college football. Yeah, like you said, we could talk about this forever. We're going to move on. We're going to move on to Texas A&M, where they just absolutely threw a beat down on Eli Drinkwitz and Mizzou. We came into this game with questions about Missouri, whether or not they're for real. They hadn't played anybody in the teams they had played, like Vandy. I guess they have played someone now. They played Vandy. They got a good win over Vandy now. They didn't look impressive, and A&M had kind of been building steam since that opening loss. And I said this was a very important one for Mike Elko. And they went out, took care of business. They're now 3-0 in the SEC. They're sitting alone at the top of the SEC. Think about that. Texas Tech, Texas A&M, Clemson, and Indiana are your sole leaders of the power conferences right now in a year where automatic qualifiers get the buys. Like, that's just unbelievable. So props to A&M for bouncing off the mat after week one. But, man, every time I looked up, they were busting some long run. Mizzou was going 3 and out. Brady Cook looked like he has all year, which is not that great. Just total domination from the Aggies.
That's where I want to start. I want to start with Brady Cook. I said before the game that there's just been something off with him so far this year. And I was expecting off of a bye week. Like I said, I put out A&M as one of my best bets. I thought A&M would win this game. I didn't think they'd win 41-10, but I thought A&M would win this game. I thought it'd be a war, to be honest with you. But I don't know that Brady Cook, the amount of regression from one year to the next is pretty astonishing. It really is. With the play caller that he's got there with Kirby Moore, with one of the best receiving corps in the country, with the best receiver in the country, it doesn't make any sense. He flat out can't push the ball down the field. He looks like he's completely in over his skis right now. He had that deer in the headlights, faraway look on his face during the A&M game the other day.
What makes less sense? Does that make less sense than the fact that Oklahoma State can't run the ball at all with the previous Doak Walker Award winner? I mean, both things are so dumbfounding.
Agreed. I know we're going to talk about them more later, but that is more dumbfounding considering he returned his entire offensive line as well. But this was more of a story about what could you imagine? Our boys over at 3 Tech, we know they're Texas A&M fans and alums. I mean, that is a big-time alumni, proud fan base that has just been starving for a good product for a while. Again, I don't want to come out here and say that this is their coming out party because whoever they play next week or whatever, we've seen multiple times now where teams have had big wins and the next week they go lay an egg. But A&M right now, welcome to big-time SEC college football, Mike Elko.
Yeah.
What a performance, man. Just all around the physical. I tweeted out from our page early on. I said, Texas A&M is just flat out whipping Mizzou's ass up front on both sides of the ball.
Yeah.
And that's what they were doing. They dominated the line of scrimmage. But you also saw what A&M could be with Connor Wigman, a healthy, 100% healthy version of Connor Wigman. That team is a different football team when the good, healthy version of Connor Wigman shows up.
It helped that he wasn't playing against Notre Dame secondary.
It did. You love throwing that out there.
He was, as far as we know, he was 100% healthy in that Notre Dame game. And I saw him in person throw for 100 yards flat and looked awful. But yeah, he looked like he looked like last year against Miami.
Yeah. Yeah, and I remember in the preseason too when I had A&M in my top overall running back units, in the top 12 or whatever it was. They weren't in my top 5 or something, but they were in my top 12. And Reuben Owens has a season-ending injury, doesn't even play in this year, and they've still got 2 studs in Le'Veon Moss and Amari Daniels, and Le'Veon Moss just went for 138 yards at 11.5 yards per carry and 3 touchdowns in this game. But A&M just across the board, dominant. The Missouri deal, it wouldn't have changed much, but that awful taking off the pass interference on the opening possession when Mizzou took a deep shot and A&M ended up interfering. that, in my opinion, did change a lot of the complexion of that game early on. But obviously, it was still such a mismatch that I don't think it would have made that big of a difference. But overall, man, if A&M gets that kind of effort out of their receivers and out of Connor Wigman, because Mike Elko is going to have that defense balling. He's just too good of a defensive coach. That scheme alone, that defense is going to be good, and they've got dudes up front on that D line. But the secondary's playing better ball than what people thought they were, and the running back position is really good for A&M. The question marks for A&M going into this year was the secondary, wide receiver group, and the offensive line. Offensive line's playing better. Receiver group, I mean, to be honest with you, hadn't shown me a ton yet, but I'm wondering how much was, though, that because of Notre Dame secondary week 1. Wigman just wasn't as sharp yet. And then they had Marcel Reed, who was a running quarterback, playing. And now, Wigman healthy. Do they look really good across the board against Mizzou? And they're a player. And the football gods, if they bless us with A&M versus Texas at the end of the year, where A&M has to win that game and they're a playoff team, that's everything we want as fans.
Yeah. I mean,
we need that. We need that as fans.
A&M schedule, I mean, they got a bye this week, so that's good. They go at Mississippi State. I'm not going to say anything's a given after what we've seen recently.
They've got another mulligan. If they lose another game, have 2 losses, and they go into that game against Texas and win that game and have wins over Texas and wins over Notre Dame and win over Missouri, they're in. They're going to get in at 10-2.
Yeah.
So they still got one more mulligan, but they may go into that game with 1 loss. You never know when you look at that schedule.
They still get LSU at home.
Yep.
They get at South Carolina, New Mexico State, and then at Auburn right before they host Texas. So they alternate home and away from here on out. But yeah, they're looking a heck of a lot better than they were early in the season, getting healthy. So
agreed.
Let's move on to the Pacific Northwest, which is classic Big Ten country, as everybody knows.
What a game.
Rematch of the national championship, as we mentioned on our last episode, when really, I mean, the coaches aren't the same, the players aren't the same. It's virtually 2 different programs. Michigan goes into the game with Alex Orji. Immediately, they fall into a 14-0 hole, and Jack Tuttle is healthy. Nobody knew Jack Tuttle was healthy, and he comes in the game. I don't know. I mean, I know he's kind of been ramping up, I heard, and someone said he took 30 to 40% of the snaps in practice. And my whole first thought of that was like, okay, if he's taking first rep snaps in practice, why are you trotting Orji out there to dig yourself a hole when you know what Orji is? I mean, they're probably giving him one more shot, see if he can make something happen. But Jack Tuttle comes in and darn near saves Michigan's season, puts up 17 straight. But then again, I mean, Michigan, the quarterbacks they have that can actually throw the ball and push the ball down the field, they got turnover issues. Davis Warren's throwing picks. Tuttle threw a pick, had a fumble. And this time, Washington capitalized. Good for Washington. They outgained the Wolverines by nearly 200 yards again, and they actually won the game this time. It was about to be 3 in a row for them. They were staring down the barrel there. But, hey, the fishbowl back. It's baby. Let's go.
How good is he, man? Seriously, think about that. Like, they lost 20 of their 20. They lost 20 starters.
Yeah.
20 of the 22 from the team that played in the national championship game last year. Lost their entire coaching staff. Brings his staff with him from Arizona and hires Steve Belichick as DC. Builds a great staff around him. Brings in Will Rogers from, I think Will Rogers may have been already committed to Washington.
Yeah, he was.
But with
DeBoer was there.
Yeah. But I mean, he's just settled in, playing really good football as well. But yeah, I mean, they are this close to being an undefeated football team. And worst case, should only have 1 loss up to this point. But that was impressive with the way that they ran the football with Jonah Coleman. I mean, he averaged about 4.5 yards a carry against that really good Michigan defensive front. Will Rogers was pretty efficient overall. Damon Williams Jr., I was kind of surprised that I was wondering what Fish was doing, playing quarterback roulette there kind of in the second half, but he played well.
It worked.
When he came in. It did. I mean, the change of pace, the dual threat you saw. I mean, I'm not comparing him to Lamar Jackson. I'm just saying he looked like Lamar Jackson out there running around. Going from Will Rogers to that was an interesting and was a change of pace and kind of caught Michigan off guard a little bit. But I mean, overall, that just a huge win for the perception of Washington's program going forward after the DeBoer era with Jed Fish and this coaching staff, Brendan Carroll at OC. I mean, again, if you're out there in on the Pacific Northwest right now, and I'm sure they're going to be able to recruit, just not only in the West Coast, but you've got to like what they've got as a staff to go for as far as the NFL routes that they've got. I mean, they've got a resume that they can literally hand you and show you of all of these NFL connections and all these NFL players that they've coached. And they're just getting it done. Jed Fish's turnaround at Arizona was incredible. And what he's doing already at Washington, remarkable for what they had to replace, losing everything that they lost in the transfer portal, graduation to the draft, all of that. But as far as Michigan goes,
this is kind of who we thought they were. I mean,
yeah, it is.
I feel validated.
Yeah, you should. And you were more on it than I was. I mean, I had them in my top 12 rankings, but I definitely said if this was a power rating, they absolutely would not be where they are. I mean, again, though, there's going to be a lot of games on this schedule, man. I'll just keep saying it because of how they play. Unless Jack Tuttle can all of a sudden be just a little bit just give them something in the passing game, maybe they can win some games. But I mean, I'll ask you this: do you think they're closer to a 9-3 team or a 7-5 team?
7-5, without a doubt.
With Oregon and Ohio State left on the schedule,
I don't even have to hesitate. They go to Illinois their next game.
Yeah,
we've seen that's on the road. They got Michigan State, which it's a rivalry game, but they should win that. Oregon at home, like we said, they go to Bloomington still, November 9th, and then obviously they got Ohio State at the end, and they're looking for revenge. So. That's 4 tough games that are real. I mean, if they're not careful, they'll be 6-6. But I think 7-5 without a doubt.
And even though they're not even in the same stratosphere, you know how. I mean, you grew up in Big Ten country, man. That big Block M showing up, that jersey, that brand, and then the defending national champs on top of it showing up, and we all know that Harbaugh and Michigan had a little bit of fun the last several years, just whipping up on some of these teams and blasting them. So everybody's licking their chops right now for a chance to play Michigan because they all believe that they can beat them. And all those teams you just named absolutely can beat them.
Yep. Let's stay in the Big Ten for one more game. Don't worry. I know there are a bunch of other upsets. We're going to get to them when we get to our rankings. But let's talk about an upset that happened up in Minneapolis. And again, USC. I mean, one of the craziest stats out there. They're still winless in Central or Eastern time zone since 2012.
That's wild.
2-8 against the spread since 2021. Big win for PJ Fleck in Minnesota. They flirted with it last week against Michigan. Kind of got the raw end of the deal on the offsides call on onside kick, which they recovered. And this is a pretty evenly played game. I mean, I know USC controlled the scoreboard for a while, but 21-22 in first downs, 373-362 in total yards. These teams were just very similar. I mean, USC kind of lost the edge there in the penalty yards, but they contained Miller Moss for the most part. Woody Marks and Darius Taylor had themselves a little duel on the ground. That was just kind of, I mean, again, USC is getting indoctrinated into some Big Ten West football.
Yeah.
And I know Michigan was in the Big Ten West, but they played like a Big Ten West team when they played them. They just ran the ball down their throat. That's all Minnesota wants to do.
Yep.
And Darius Taylor, we talked about him preseason. He finally showed up. And we talked about how the USC speed could be a difference in the Big Ten, and it's not turning out to be that way.
It's not. It's really not. Good call by you. You had Minnesota against the spread.
Plus 9.5. I put USC on upset alert. It's just Lincoln Riley is now 5-7 in his last 12 games as a USC coach. He started off 17-3. And there's a lot of other coach. I mean, Billy Napier's 5-7 in his last 12 games at Florida.
Yep.
Right.
Sonny Dykes.
Yep. Hugh Freeze.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not talking about these guys in the same breath as Lincoln Riley. He's kind of being held above them because he's at USC and he's got Heisman Trophy winners in his trophy case, and I know his defense is improved, and maybe next year they'll take another step, but you got to start winning some of these games that you're favored by 8.5, 9 points on the road. And I know we talked all preseason, this 2024 season could be very 2007-esque. And, you know, I think it's playing out. It's going to be tough for anybody to win on the road.
Yeah, it is. One thing I want to say, we definitely get a lot of things wrong on here. We get some things right as well. One of the things that 2 years in a row that we seem to be getting right, other than week 1 this year, our upset alerts are doing well.
Mm-hmm.
Again, they either are pulling the upsets outright. Somebody that we give out is either pulling the upset outright or they're covering the spread, one or the other. So yeah, good call by you on that. I mean, in this one, USC wasn't able to hit really any explosives down the field in the pass game. They threw the ball 38 times and only had 200 yards passing. I mean, that's 5.3 average. Mm-hmm. That's not going to get it done in the pass game when you try to throw it that many times. The 3 turnovers is what did them in. Again, I mean, at this point, 9-3 USC is not getting in. They got to run the table from here on out, and they've got Penn State coming up.
Yeah, bad part is they've got 2 losses in conference already. So
yeah, they
kind
do.
of, you know, with Ohio State and Oregon and Penn State playing as well as they are with 0 losses, that kind of puts them behind the 8 ball a little bit. I mean, they're going to have an awful lot of luck to try to play for that Big Ten championship.
Yeah, they will. They will. But if they go 10-2 with wins over LSU, Notre Dame, and Penn State,
yeah.
I mean, again, we've talked. There's 12 teams that's going to get in. They would be right there in the hunt, no doubt about it. But now that was their no more mulligans. They've got to win out now. I don't know. I'll be honest, I don't think they can, but maybe they will.
Yeah.
But USC's the wolves are howling around the country right now about Lincoln Riley. Every loss is even bigger right now, especially when you're losing to Minnesota. I mean, nothing against Minnesota. I've actually got them over on my over as one of my season win totals, so that was a great over on my season win totals. Last year was an anomaly for PJ Fleck. He's done a really good job at Minnesota, but let's just call it what it is. USC should not be losing to Minnesota. They just shouldn't. And yes, for anybody that's listening to this that wants to just say, well, Alabama shouldn't be losing to Vandy, you're right. I'll eat it. I'll take it. There you go.
Yeah.
All right. Let's get to our rankings, bro. That's what everybody wants to hear.
All right, let's do the top 12. Coming in at number 1 is Texas now.
Yep.
And they were on a bye week. They're getting ready for the Red River shootout coming out on this Saturday. They're also number 1 in the AP poll. Number 2 is now Ohio State. We're pretty lockstep there, number 1 and number 2. Ohio State took care of business. Jim Knowles' defense showed up for us. I think we were both on the Iowa team total under 13.5 there.
And I had the Buckeyes too against the spread, and it got there. I gave out the stat last episode, but it's unbelievable how bad Iowa has been against the better teams that they face. Like I said, the last 6 years, they've been an average score margin of 36-4. And that was about the same. What was it, 35-7?
35-7.
Yeah, so, yeah, about the same.
Yep. Jeremiah Smith, more highlight reel catches, another touchdown. Him and Ryan Williams just kind of dueling touchdowns right now as far as freshman wide receivers go, so that's fun to watch. Number 3 in the consensus is Penn State. We kept them ahead of Oregon, who our number 4 team is, because they were ranked ahead of them last week. That's kind of the tiebreaker. I actually ranked Oregon ahead of Penn State. I know both have had their struggles. Obviously, Oregon struggled against Idaho, and they had, struggled against Boise State, which, again, we're finding out Boise State's pretty dang good. Yeah. Penn State had their struggles, obviously, with Bowling Green at home. Haven't really played anybody of note since then. Obviously took care of UCLA this past weekend.
Hold up now. The Illini fans came after us.
I know.
On Twitter the other day, but they beat Illinois. Illinois,
yeah,
I know.
I forgot about that. I'll own that. I forgot about that.
It's okay. And they went on the road to Old Country Roads to Morgantown and got a dub.
Yep. So Penn State comes in at 3, Oregon comes in at 4. Oregon handled business before their showdown with Ohio State coming up this Saturday. They took care of Michigan State on Friday night. That score probably seems a lot closer than that game was. Jordan James had a heck of a game on the ground, 166 yards, and they just kind of rolled to a pretty easy victory over Michigan State. Number 5, who we got at number 5, Lance? People be shocked by this?
They might. They might. We've got Alabama number 5. The AP poll has them at 7. And we've got Georgia at 6. Be honest with you, I teetered back and forth on this. And I will give my actual analysis. And I know you can say, yeah, you're an Alabama fan. No, I'll give my actual analysis on it is that you said it best. That Alabama's got the best win. And that win happens to be head-to-head.
Yeah.
Georgia's got the best loss, and Alabama has the worst loss.
Yeah.
Georgia's best loss is to who? Alabama.
Exactly.
So, but I will say this, openly 100% admit this. If anybody has Georgia ahead of Alabama right now, I'm not going to argue with you. Like, you're just splitting hairs at this point in the season.
I'll argue with them because, I mean, I think head-to-head should – it's got to mean something, especially when you have the equal amount of losses. If Alabama goes out and they lose another game and they got more losses than Georgia, okay. But you got equal amount of losses, and I know – I mean, if we were ranking everything by the worst loss with all these one-loss teams, Alabama wouldn't even probably be in our top 12, right? I mean, right. So you got to go by the full resume, and Georgia has – a really good win over Clemson, and it's getting better and better every week, right? Mm-hmm. That's nothing to take away from Georgia. They got a solid win over Auburn this week. Nail biter against Kentucky. Let's not forget about that. Alabama went on the road, played Wisconsin. Sorry, I can't help it. They knocked out their quarterback in the first quarter and rolled to an easy victory. It's like not their fault. They played good defense on the guy. Like, what do you want me to say? I just think
they took care of business and spanked whiskey at whiskey.
And then they obviously, I mean, I think the second half of the Alabama-Georgia game was so incredible, and Georgia won that second half. People are like, okay, that's the real Georgia, right? This is the real Alabama. And maybe it is. Okay, but you can't discount the fact that Alabama jumped out to a 28-0 lead on that Georgia team. And then they held on for the victory. I don't know where Alabama would be right now if it wasn't for Ryan Williams, which is a crazy thing to say about a dude who should be a senior in high school. Yeah. But he made a play, and they won the game. And, I mean, that's why the games are scheduled. They won the head-to-head battle, and that's really why I ranked them ahead of Georgia.
Well said. Well said. Yeah. Nah, you convinced me. You convinced me.
Yeah.
So we had Bama at 5, Georgia at 6. Georgia took care of business against Auburn. They struggled a little bit with Auburn there for a little while, and they ended up, taking it there at the end.
Yeah, and I'll talk about Georgia too. I just don't think their offense is any good. I mean, they're doing enough right now. Obviously, like we talked about, and again, we kind of alluded to it even after the Alabama-Georgia game, that Alabama may have some defensive problems. Mm-hmm. And they clearly after the Vandy game they do. So it's like, okay, when you're taking deep shots against, freshman cornerbacks and Damani Jackson and those guys, yeah, you're bound to make some plays, and they did in the second half. But they just slogged through that Auburn game when they should have come out and they should have stepped on their throats. And so I'm worried for the Dogs going into Austin in a couple weeks. And I know a lot of people are thinking it's just SEC and maybe so, but I haven't seen a lot out of Georgia's offense this year and a lot out of their playmakers without Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey to think that they're going to be able to turn it around or find some diamond in the rough.
You're not the only one, man. Did you hear Kirby after the game calling out the Georgia fans?
Oh, I mean, and I
by the way, I've been there. I've been there as an Alabama fan. I've been to Alabama games where they beat a team by like 14 or 17 or whatever.
Yeah.
And everybody's pissed. Everybody's like, it's like silent. People leave the game early because you're so spoiled by all of the winning that coach has done. Georgia now is experiencing that with Kirby. They just win all these games, and now when they're beating teams, not beating them impressively, and not beating them as bad as they want them to beat them, or maybe some of these Georgia fans all have money on the game. I don't know.
Yeah.
And yeah, they're not happy right now with the performances that Georgia's putting out on the field, even though they're still winning games.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I mean, unless Texas or Ohio State keeps on rolling from here on out and they go 16-0, like I think that Michigan team last year might have been like one of the last truly like just great teams we'll see for a while. And obviously like the Alabama dynasty that they had might be the last kind of college football dynasty we see for a long time, because again, like we've talked about all offseason, this NIL and the portal and the spreading of the wealth and of talent in college football is making it so you're not going to be able to go to places other than maybe Mississippi State, right? But even that game against Texas, when they played Texas, they covered the spread. Like it wasn't close, but what we're thinking, and we're looking at Vegas lines and the spread, these games are a lot closer, right? And I mean, you could see that game, even in that Alabama Vandy game, that spread came out at 24 and it's down to 21.5, 22. Like people are starting to catch on. Okay. The talent discrepancy is not, it's the gap is not as big anymore in college football. So that Michigan team last year went 15-0, kind of dominated, everybody except for Alabama. That might be one of the last great teams we see for a while, unless Texas or Ohio State proves me wrong, but we'll see.
Yeah, no, that's well said, man. And that's something I want to get into more later on. Just the new age of college football and what it's doing overall to the sport. But that was well said there. Where are we at? 7 now? 7. We've got a team that have been just an absolute wagon up to this point. That the wheels fell off the wagon in Fayetteville, and that's Tennessee.
Yeah. We got to talk about this one.
Yeah, we've got Tennessee at number 7. They dropped a little bit in our polls. They're number 8 in the AP poll right now, so we're not far off where the AP has them. I think the thing I was most surprised about in this game, Tennessee's defense played well. They didn't play great, as elite as they've been. But the thing that surprised me the most is, I mean, in that game, I'm not saying he is better, but in that game, Taylor Green was a better quarterback than Nico Iamaleava.
What do we think's up with Heupel in the offense? Like, I know he's wanting to establish the ground game a lot more, but he's either afraid to let Nico launch it, or he's just not putting the ball in his hands enough. Like, I just don't. I think when you run the ball so much, like when you run the ball against Oklahoma and NC State in those games, and I know NC State was a blowout and Oklahoma was somewhat close, but I mean, they had like 52 and 44 carries, and they easily doubled up the pass attempts.
Yep.
When you do that, your quarterback can't get in any sort of rhythm. Yep. And so I mean, we saw him with Hendon Hooker a couple of years ago, like just launch it. And that seemed to be pretty effective from my eyes.
Yeah. And look, we have praised, we've honestly done nothing but praise Tennessee, and rightfully so, up to this point in the season. So I think it's okay and fair to now throw out some question marks with them after that performance. And the thing, if I'm a Tennessee fan, the thing that I would be most nervous about after that game is what you just alluded to, is that they needed Nico to go be a star in that game last night. That's what they needed. They needed the high-flying Josh Heupel type offense last night. That's what they needed to see. And that's what they needed to happen to win that game. I would be worried a little bit with the part of, I'm not saying this is a thing, but weren't you a little bit worried that Heupel didn't go to Nico?
I'm wondering
go do that.
What's the game plan when you watch Oklahoma State throw the ball up and down the field on them?
Yeah, UAB did. Auburn threw the ball all over the field on them too. They just threw 6 turnovers.
Yeah,
I'm just speculating. I'm honestly just thinking out loud here on a podcast. Is Heupel felt so much in love with the defense that he's almost going too far that direction? I'm not saying all year long.
Do you think he's trying to prove something? Like everyone's like, they just talk about Heupel's high-flying offenses, but he's trying to prove them wrong, that he's like, I'm going to grind it out.
I don't know about trying to prove. I just think that he feels like that his defense is so dominant, which they are really good. But that game last night was the game that you needed your QB to go take that one. Go take over. Go win us this football game with your right arm. And go be an absolute dude like we believe you are. But the problem is they didn't do that with him. So that's my question. Is there something that we are missing? I say we. The whole freaking world has hyped this dude up so much. We have too. All off season and all season long up to this point. I don't care what he did against Kent State, okay? I just don't. They didn't have to use him against Oklahoma as much. And he threw a couple of freaking piss missiles in that game that were unbelievable throws. Yeah. But overall, we haven't seen him go in and take over games like Hendon Hooker did a few years ago. That would be my thing. That he's a very young quarterback. I think that was like, his 6th start or 7th start ever? Yeah. He's very young. But I would be a little worried if as a Tennessee fan, if after that game of why is Heupel not trusting Nico more? Is there something going on there that he maybe isn't as far along as we all think he might be? Again, that's me playing devil's advocate. I still think the guy is going to be really freaking good this year. I don't think that's the thing, but it is fair to question it, no doubt. But hey, Taylor Green, Arkansas. I know Taylor Green went down there at the end of the game, but Arkansas's defense made some plays and were wreaking havoc in the backfield. Other than Dylan Sampson's really long run, it's not like they just ran the ball down Arkansas's throat by any means. Yeah. It was a big-time win for Arkansas. And, dude, Sam Pittman after the game, God love him. I just want to give that guy a hug. I want to give him a hug, and I just want to crush a few beers with him.
He's been through it, man.
Yeah, he's been through it. Good stuff, man. All right, number 8, we've got Miami at 8.
Undefeated behind some one-loss teams there.
There is. The AP poll has them at 6. Now, I believe this was our only, correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't this our only, big discrepancy?
We were way off here.
Yeah, I had Miami at 5.
And I had them at 10.
Yeah, so again, our consensus poll is obviously we average it out. And
I initially had them up there because, again, I talked about how head-to-head matters, and so you're thinking, okay, winning games just has to matter, right? But a lot of this is just how you look, and the past couple weeks have really thrown some worries into it. And last week with the Hail Mary, it was the right call. But ACC Replay Center seemed to come to the aid of Miami. And the ACC Replay Center seemed to come to the aid of Miami last night. Credit to them for coming back down 35-10 at Cal. That place was rocking. Like you talked about how Auburn went there last year and just kind of like a sleepy place. Like it wasn't sleepy at all yesterday. No. They had Miami coming in there. They were hyped up.
Game day was lit.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Literally.
I mean that game day scene was just. I saw everyone cool. Talking about it online. Like that's what you get when you go outside of like the SEC footprint. You go away from Ohio State and Alabama and Georgia 2 times a year because those teams, those fans are just used to it. Cal and like some of these other schools like never had it. Like dude, they showed up. And they had Saban with the blue and gold tie on and everything. Like, it was so good out there. But they jumped out to a 35-10 lead. Cam Ward trying to do Cam Ward things, throwing balls across the field, across his body, pick 6. And Cal's rolling, and probably 20 minutes left in the game, 22 minutes left in the game. And they start trying to take the air out of the ball, try to drain the clock, which isn't a terrible strategy. Got real conservative. But, Miami just got the ball. They kept coming back. You just kind of felt it was inevitable. It's 38-32, and Fernando Mendoza runs the ball and gets hit with what looks like a pretty clear targeting. And I know if you're running with the football, you're kind of deemed a runner, and so the rules are a little different, but it looked like the Miami guy even launched himself into him. With the
crown of his helmet.
With the crown of his helmet. And again, the ACC Replay Center comes to the aid. They don't call it targeting, and Cal ends up punting. They leave Xavier Restrepo just wide freaking open. Get all the way down there. They finally score, and you got freaking Michael Irvin over on the sideline on all 4. Like that's honestly, that's the reason why people don't like Miami is like guys like Michael Irvin. Like, I mean, just over there acting just like a fool. But Miami, credit to them, they came back and they won the game, right?
Yeah.
I give them credit for that. Alabama didn't do that.
Nope.
Tennessee didn't do that.
Nope.
Michigan didn't do that. USC didn't do that, right? So
Right.
credit to Miami for coming back and winning the game. There's something to be said for that. I just think in my poll, the way they looked, I wouldn't put them up against any of those teams in front of them right now. It seems like you probably value the win-loss record a little more. And so we averaged them out and they came in the 8th spot.
Yeah, and the couple things. Obviously, yes, that we've seen all these teams lose games they shouldn't lose. Miami has, however, found ways to actually win them.
Yeah.
But what's funny about this is we've got them at 8 in our consensus. We're going to get dogged for this on social media, and it just cracks me up. Like the poll that they're all going to reference, they're going to act like we've got them 10 spots off, and they're literally 2 spots away from the other one. But I'm going to be a little bit of a box score Barry here, as you say, because unfortunately I fell asleep at the end of the third quarter and did not get to see the fourth quarter of this game. And of course, I woke up to see what had happened, what had transpired, and what had happened, and I went back and actually watched the fourth quarter this morning, before the kids got up, and I went and looked at the box score of this game, and I was just like, bruh. Miami had 30 first downs to Cal's 12 first downs. Miami had 575 total yards against a Justin Wilcox defense to 370 for Cal. 437 passing yards. I mean, they literally dominated every single phase of the game except even time of possession, 37 minutes to 22 minutes. They dominated every phase of the game in the box score other than the actual score. They just won. They ended up finding a way to win. That's just one of those, again, if I told you that, hey, Miami's going to have 30 first downs and Cal's only going to have 12. Miami's going to have 575 yards and Cal's only going to have 370. How many points you think? Would you take the 10 and a half against the spread with Miami if I told you that? Yeah. Right. So just wild. Again, things got weird out in Berkeley.
Yep.
No doubt about it.
ACC after dark.
It is. ACC after dark. All Coast Conference after dark.
Exactly.
All right, number 9 is a really good freaking football team that everybody buried after week 1. And here they are at number 9. We've got them at 9. The AP's got them at 10, and that's Clemson. It's a good football team, man. They got a really good freaking defense, really good coaching staff, and they have found an offense. And they're only going to continue to get better because they've actually got some young guys playing at receiver. They got a nice little mix of veterans and young guys. And the young guys that are playing are some big-time playmakers on both sides of the ball. So they're only going to continue to get better, and there's going to be, at the end of the year, people are going to be sitting there, and there's going to be that brand, that Tiger Paw, sitting there with a chance to get into the playoff. And it just really seems to look like, I know there's going to be a team in a minute we're going to talk about more in the ACC that seems to be coming along. But it looks like that we might be getting in a collision course of Miami and Clemson in the ACC championship game. And I hope that's what we get, because us as football fans deserve that, because that's 2 really good football teams.
Yeah. Yeah. Florida State, obviously not what they have been in the past, but they showed up. Their defense played as well as they could. They tried, Brock Glenn was probably better than DJ. 228 yards, a couple touchdowns.
For sure better than DJ.
Yeah, so again, it was just too much.
They end up covering that? If they did, that's a gross cover.
It got up to like 16.5 or 17, so I think they did end up covering, but it started out at 14 earlier in the week. So,
yeah,
depending on where you got that.
That's true. That's true. It went off at 16.5, it looks like. But yeah, if you got it at 14.5, you might have gotten a nice little cover there at the end.
Yeah.
But the only thing I'll say about that game is some of these games where you have a team that's got a lot of talent on their team, but they're not winning games, they look for a couple of games on the schedule that they can put on film for NFL scouts. In the ACC, no offense to a lot of the teams in the ACC, but you don't have a lot of opportunities There's only a certain few games that Florida State's going to play this year that these guys on that defensive line that were supposedly supposed to be so great, and some of these guys that are probably going to go to the NFL for Florida State, playing against Clemson's talent, playing against Miami's talent, teams like that are the games that they can put on film to go do that. Because let's be real, it doesn't seem like that a lot of these Florida State guys really give a rat's ass anymore about winning football games.
No.
They don't. So putting big-time tape on film against really good players against Clemson and stuff is what they like. I've just heard other coaches say that in the past, that you'd see a lot of teams do that, and I'm wondering if that's what Florida State did against Clemson.
Yeah.
Who we got at 10?
Number 10, we got Ole Miss, who comes in at number 9 in the AP, and they may have gotten their ugly loss out a week earlier than everybody else because they went into South Carolina at Williams-Brice Stadium, tough place, and you watched this game, and Ole Miss was just putting a beat down on the Gamecocks.
Yeah, man, they just looked really sharp. I think it was the first time since I can't remember the date, but it's the first time that Clemson Ole Miss played like a power opponent and gave up 3 points or less in a long, long time. And you and I off air have talked about certain teams and what I talked about with you after even the Kentucky game, but before the Kentucky game, even the trash teams, like the absolute street trash teams that Ole Miss was playing, it still really got my attention that Ole Miss was holding these teams to practically no points at all. We have not seen that from an Ole Miss defense since the quote-unquote land shark defense when Hugh Freeze was there for that couple of years when they had a really good defense back then. And even then, this defense is playing some really good football right now. I know South Carolina's offense isn't just some elite offense or anything, but still, this is Ole Miss we're talking about defensively. On the road in Williams-Brice, holding them to 3 freaking points. That's impressive. And again, Ole Miss their defense wasn't the issue against Kentucky. This time, Jackson Dart and that offense showed up to the party. And I texted you during the game multiple times, and I said, man, they just look sharp.
Yeah.
They look just fluent. They were, they look really good, man. They got up off the mat.
Yep. Number 11, we got BYU. They were on a bye week this week. AP has them at 14. They got a big one coming up against Arizona. And then at number 12, we were waffling probably between Iowa State and Indiana. And we went with the Cyclones because their resume just kind of overall is just a touch better than Indiana's right now. Obviously, that win at Iowa and the Cyhawk series week 2 carries a lot of weight with the way they came back. And they took care of business this week against Baylor by 22, so they covered that spread. And they go on the road to Morgantown.
Tricky spot this week because they get most of their big games in Ames this year. That's a tough spot, man, going to Morgantown this coming up week. We'll touch on more on that later.
All right, let's do a quick recap of the top 12. Texas, Ohio State, 1 and 2. Penn State, 3. Oregon, 4. Alabama, 5. Georgia, 6. Tennessee, 7. Miami, 8. Clemson, 9. Ole Miss, 10. BYU, 11. And Iowa State, 12. I don't think those last 2 teams we thought would be approaching the top 12 at any time this year. But, hey, it's college football. So, speaking of college football, it's October, man, so things are going to start getting ramped up here. College football playoff is being talked about a lot more. The rankings are going to come out starting in 3 or 4 weeks here. And I know the news broke this week that it was a tough week for them to do it, but the news broke that the SEC and the Big Ten were each wanting 4 automatic spots in the future and everything, and then they go and 4 top 11 teams lost to unranked teams from these 2 conferences.
That's why that happened. I know. Let's just call it what it is. That was poetic justice. That's why that happened.
Well, and they'll say, "Oh, it's conference opponents, so you're tougher opponents." Well, Vandy lost to Georgia State. It's just they did. Yeah. Minnesota lost to North Carolina week 1.
Yep.
Okay, so these teams aren't necessarily
Arkansas
world beaters.
Lost to Oklahoma State.
Yeah, Washington lost to Washington State. So everyone's got bad losses. But you got any thoughts just kind of on the CFP and kind of discussion out there? I know we've seen some mock brackets and bubble watches and all that.
Not really. It's just what we talked about. I will say this, what we talked about going into the year of how we're going to have to retrain our minds and our brains like, yes, I was very down last night and even this morning after the Alabama Vandy deal. But the difference is, again, like you see all these mock like Andy Staples released his and all these other people. And I saw people that were just bashing Alabama losing to Vandy and Tennessee losing to Arkansas after those games last night. And then they're releasing their projected playoff brackets, and they have both those teams going because that's where we are now. You're going to have to retrain your brain that no matter which side of the fence you're on, if you liked it more where you got to win all your games or whatever, and when you lose to a team like Vandy, if you're Alabama, or you lose to a team like Northern Illinois, if you're Notre Dame, or if you're USC and you lose to a team like Minnesota and you have multiple losses, you should not get a chance to play in a playoff, whatever side of the fence you are on. All those teams I just mentioned are absolutely still in the very thick of it in a playoff race. I don't care that the AP doesn't have you. Did the AP drop you, by the way, USC completely out of the rankings?
Completely out, but they kept Michigan in, so good for them.
Okay. So, again, USC wins out, they're probably going to be in the playoffs. That's just the way it is. They go 10-2 with the wins that we talked about earlier, they're probably in. I don't care what the AP has them right now. But that's where we are in college football right now. Teams can lose multiple games. Teams are going to, obviously, from what we've seen so far through 5-6 weeks of college football, teams are going to be losing multiple games and going to be in this college football playoff.
Yeah.
I think that is the thing that has gotten my attention more than any so far through this early part of the season is that. What I'm interested to see, though, more is when the rankings come out is where that goofy committee where they have people ranked. How different is it going to be? I'm just interested to see what they value like non-conference stuff more.
We know it changes week to week.
Yeah, exactly. You're right. They'll change their narrative.
And we'll be here to bash them every step of the way.
Yeah, we will. I can't wait, dude.
Yeah. But the poetic justice you talked about, like the 4 automatic spots, I think it's a stupid idea, and I don't know what the point of even putting that out there is or leaking it. But like you don't even get 4 automatic spots in March Madness. Like you get 1 spot for a conference champion, like, and that's it. And like everybody else plays their way in. So it's all money grab, and that's the worst part about college football right now. But whatever. Yeah. Let's move on to another game. SMU Louisville. I know you're on the wrong side of this one, but I had to come out feeling that SMU was just they're proving something to us. I know they had that BYU loss, and everybody was down on them because Preston Stone wasn't playing well, but Kevin Jennings has come in, and he's really playing really well for the Mustangs, and
he's a dude.
Again, that was kind of like an elimination game there, and we're looking at Clemson, Miami, and SMU. Like we said all along in the preseason, SMU could be there. This isn't your traditional, group of 5 roster that's moving to a power conference. And the ACC's down, obviously, and so SMU can make some noise.
Yeah, that win got my attention for the Ponies. Like I said, I was on Louisville -6.5, and I'm not going to go on a rant here, but we talked about replay. We've talked about officials. Josh Pate on his show has talked about how bad officials have been this year. We see it every single week now. But the replay that they called where SMU fumbled the ball, Louisville recovered there at the end, towards the end of the game. They went to review. There was absolutely zero evidence showing at all. I'm going to say zero that he was down. And they say he was down. And then SMU, because that happened at about the Louisville 10-yard line.
Yeah.
And I think 2 plays later, SMU's in the end zone going up 34-27. And they won the game 34-27. But I'm going to now take that. That was me just being butthurt because I lost a bet. But now, as far as the game on the field, yeah, dude, SMU really got my attention with that game. It's obvious. Like Preston Stone was supposed to be a really good quarterback going to this year for them. He was really good in the past for them, but they found their guy with Kevin Jennings. He is, even some of the balls he was missing on downfield were like on the money, and DBs for Louisville were having to make spectacular plays, or a wide receiver would drop it or something. And then with his dual threat ability and Rhett Lashley's offense, I mean, that is, before the season started, us and other people were talking about how, I say us, me and other people were talking about how UCF could be like a sleeping giant in the Big 12. Maybe that's the squad there in Dallas.
Yeah.
Maybe it's SMU with their footprint, their recruiting footprint that they're in, the amount of money that they've got there in today's college football world. That was a really, really good win for SMU on the road at Louisville. On the flip side of that, that's a bad loss for Louisville, man. At home, you can't drop that one. You just can't.
Toughest remaining game for SMU is Pitt right now.
Oh yeah, you pointed it out. Well, that was another reason. But I think K Ford talked about it. Kelly Ford and K Ford ratings before the season. I think about 68 teams in like Power Four plus Notre Dame or whatever, however many teams it was, that they had one of the weakest schedules and one of the weakest conference schedules in general. And that was their toughest game left on their schedule was at Louisville.
Yeah.
So be interesting, man. But this was the team I was alluding to earlier when I was saying that, you know, us as fans were on the pace to get a dandy in the ACC championship game with Miami and Clemson. The Ponies are right there in the thick of it right now.
And they don't play either one of those teams. They don't have a conference loss.
Nope.
Miami has still got, a game at Louisville here in a couple weeks. Maybe Louisville gets a little revenge. Yep. Miami obviously has struggled with the past couple games. And so if either of them or Clemson's going to drop one, it's probably going to be Miami, in my opinion. But we'll see. One last thing we want to touch on before we get to guess the spread. We'll spend about 30 seconds on it because we are officially cooking Mike Gundy and the Oklahoma State Cowboys. They're done. 0-3 in the conference. They just got blasted at home by West Virginia, 38-14. They can't run the ball with the guy who won the Doak Walker Award. They can't throw the ball with the guy who's been in college for 85 years. And, man.
They can't play defense.
They can't play defense, and I thought, we think highly of Mike Gundy, but this might end up turning out to be, from here on out, it's either going to be deemed his worst coaching job of his career at Oklahoma State. If they somehow turn this around, it might be his best, right?
Yeah, I still just don't understand the Ollie Gordon and the offensive line woes at all.
Yeah,
I have no idea. I knew their defense wasn't very good, but the fact that they can't run the football at all makes zero sense.
Yep. Yeah, so it is what it is. Oklahoma State, they were one of my picks to appear in the Big 12 championship game, and they're not going anywhere near that this year. So let's get to everybody's favorite segment, Guess the Spread, where Lance Barton gives his best shot at what he thinks the line should be or what the Vegas line will be in college football matchups. So obviously we've been targeting October 12th for quite some time. And October 19th next weekend is going to be really, really good too. So I got 8 games on the schedule here. We're just going to kick it off with the banger, number 2 versus number 3, Saturday night, primetime NBC. I'm hoping it's as good as what we got in the second half of the Alabama-Georgia game because that was fun to watch. Ohio State going on the road to Eugene. 55,000 seat stadium doesn't seem like a lot, but man, do players say that place is loud. So Ohio State going on the road, number 2 versus number 3 Oregon. What's the spread?
Buckeyes 3.5.
It's Buckeyes 3.5. I saw 4.5 even in some places. Do you think that's too much respect for the Buckeyes? Too little respect for the Ducks at home?
4.5 is a little rich.
Yeah.
Opening. Now, I see people betting it up, whatever.
Yep.
But, 4.5 might be a little rich, like opening. I think it should be more in that field goal. There's not a huge difference in 4.5. But, again, 4 is a key number. So that's it. That's interesting. There's some 4.5s out there.
Yep. All right. Penn State going on the road to USC. That'll be a 3:30 kickoff on CBS.
Penn State.
Another ranked team going on the road against an unranked opponent now. Those are dangerous spots.
They are. USC, I'm sure they still get plenty of respect. Penn State, probably around the same. Is that what, 4.5? 4?
4.5 or 5.
Okay.
Yeah, Penn State favored on the road. So we'll see how many people show up for it. And again, one of the stats that has been put out there, Big Ten teams in conference play traveling 2+ time zones right now, straight up 1-7.
Ooh.
Only win Indiana at UCLA.
I don't know that Penn State had on the bingo card that USC was going to lose to Minnesota. This is without a doubt like back against the wall, like have to win. Like every game from here on out for USC's have to win.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't know if they can do anything about it against Penn State. We'll see.
Yep. All right, here's one for you. South Carolina at Alabama.
Oof. 21, Bama, 21.5, 21.
21.5. Saw some 22s out there.
Dude, I am on fire right now.
Here's one you were waiting for. I don't know if you looked at it or not, but Vanderbilt.
Hang on a second. Emily, we're moving to Vegas. All right, go ahead.
Vanderbilt going on the road to Lexington to play at Kroger Field, 7:45 kickoff at night.
God, man. Kentucky. Kentucky 7.5.
Ooh, not going to Vegas anymore. Kentucky 12.5 or 13.
Woo!
Diego Pavia still getting disrespected. Can he do it on the road? That's the big question.
Dude.
He did it on the road in Missouri. I mean,
okay, so that was going to be an auto bet for me. Was going to be Kentucky this week. That's rich, bro.
Yeah.
But they may beat the brakes off of them, but that's rich.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Red River Shootout, Texas versus Oklahoma.
Texas 14.5, somewhere in that range.
Texas 14.5.
Okay.
Florida at Tennessee, catching the Vols after a loss at night in Neyland.
Tennessee 16.
15.5, 16. Good call.
Dude, this is besides the Vandy one.
You might already know this one because we were talking about it last week. Ole Miss at LSU. This is the only bet that I've made so far this week is Ole Miss at LSU. I think it's got game of the year potential. LSU coming off a bye. Ole Miss playing their 7th game in a row. At night.
Calling you shot like that. Game of the year potential.
At night in Baton Rouge. You know how that goes.
Yeah, I do. Honestly, man, I think when we talked about it, did you? I think I said I would make Ole Miss somewhere between 1 or 2. Mm-hmm. So Ole Miss 2.5.
The line is at 2.5 right now. Ole Miss is favored, and I was able to get when it opened LSU plus 3.5. So
you got who?
LSU plus 3.5.
Oh, I thought you said you got Ole Miss plus 3.5. I was just saying, I thought you loved LSU in this spot.
Nope, LSU plus 3.5.
Okay.
Last game of the night. Big 12 after dark in Boulder. Kansas State at Colorado.
I can't believe I'm saying this, man. With all the games on the board, I'm really excited about this game.
You get to learn a lot about these two teams.
Yes, you do. Because we said it a few weeks ago that Kansas State's problem seems to be stopping the pass, and we know that Shadur and those receivers can sling it around.
That's all they're going to do.
Exactly. If they can give him time, he can cook. All right. I'm going to say K-State 7.
K-State is favored by 5.5.
Okay.
It was 9.5. And it dropped all the way to 5.5. Like 9.5 last week. Look ahead line.
Well, after the Florida UCF game, but dude, I've just come to terms with it that week to week in college football so far, and the whole transitive property thing of some of these other teams, what they do against each other, it just doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So, like, I know Colorado went on the road and beat UCF, but it looks like UCF might be booty, but whatever. Interesting.
Yep. So notice has been served. You guys thought this was going to be a soft schedule this weekend. From here on out, it's October, soon to be November, and we are full steam ahead towards the college football playoff. We're going to be here with you every step of the way, twice a week on Mondays and Thursdays. Come join us. Send it to your friends. Send it to your family. Send it to anybody who loves college football. We're on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. You can find us on X. You can find us on Instagram. Come follow us. We love the interaction. We love the banter. It's what we live for. So, except for our children. But yeah, man. So can't wait to talk previews of this big October 12th slate that we've been hyping up. We'll be back on Thursday. And until then, we'll see you next time.